I always try to check myself and say, am I hanging on to this out of love or fear? Probably a theme of this is just getting out in your community and knowing that you add value. It feels good to, give back and just talk with others and realize like we're really not alone. You are worthy of healing. So don't let this moment or trauma, whatever happened to you, define you.
Transitioning from military service to civilian life often brings unique challenges and opportunities for growth. Today, we're excited to welcome back Navy veteran Jenna Carlton. Jenna is the founder of the Millennial Veterans Facebook group and Instagram community, which connects thousands of veterans each month by addressing the emotional side of life after service. Her work extends beyond social media. She runs a women veterans morale group, and she's also the author of the Veteran Workbook, a journal-style guide designed to help veterans reflect on their service and plan for a fulfilling future. Jenna's dedication to empowering younger veterans through community, storytelling, and mental health advocacy has made her a vital voice in the veteran space. Jenna, thanks so much for coming back on the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast.
Absolutely. It is such a pleasure to be here. And thank you for the wonderful intro. I might have to steal that.
Well, whatever you need, because you are just such an inspiration for Leanne, myself, and so many veterans out there. And you're such a great connector. And I'm really excited to jump into the conversation. So I just want to remind our listeners, start tracking your walk right now using the Strava app. Join the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran community walking group. And Jenna, tell us everything that's been going on, because you've been an advocate for change in spaces where progress feels so slow or even stagnant. What's inspired you to take action in moments when it feels like no one else is stepping up?
I don't even know if it's inspiration, but maybe impulse of just being like, wondering if anybody else is going to say anything and just knowing that someone needs to. I'm not even thinking about who it's going to be, just making sure that someone's saying something, whether it's, just speaking out in a male-dominated space, such as the veteran community, or even in person, just showing up in places where younger people aren't showing up and just saying, hey, we want to be a part of this. We want to continue the legacy of the veteran community and, be a part of that transition after service.
It's really beautiful. And I don't know if it's impulsivity on your part or calculated risk management, because like last year when we started our podcast back in 2022, we got a chance to meet last year at the Military Influencer Conference in 2023. And there was one particular panel where your name became widely known amongst the veterans there. There was one panel specifically where there was several members of leadership within the military and veteran community that was asking the audience, like, how can we be doing better? And you felt like some of the answers were to placate an emotion versus actually like signify action. And you stepped up to the mic as like one of the last speakers and you said, in essence, stop bullshitting us.
Yep. And then I wrote an article about it and it went all over the place. But no, that really was a reaction because, in my community, I'm seeing the pain, I'm seeing the real stories, and to have the VA use a wide brush and just put it over as, saying, oh, we just get a bad reputation, bad news travels fast, when it's so much deeper than that. There's so much, that's just kind of invalidating all of the real struggles people have, whether it's getting an appointment, getting proper care, or just being heard by utilizing their own benefits that they earned. So it just really struck a nerve with me. And I was like, I have to say something, because I don't want anyone to walk away from this panel that's maybe not in the military community or veteran community that knows what's going on and think that that's an appropriate response.
No, that's so good. And, it's really important for people to understand some of the frustrations. And you've got your finger on the pulse, especially with your millennial veterans groups. You have an unending list of chat groups that fall under the millennial veterans. If you have an interest or a gripe or an area of concern, you have a chat group for it where veterans are talking about what's available. And it's not like one of these other groups where people go on there and they say, hey, how do I increase my claim? Like, people are saying like, hey, I'm having this issue. I'm trying to get mental health care and they're saying that nothing is available, or I'm trying to get into a doctor's appointment for, an injury I suffered while in service and they're saying that I'm not rated for it. Is there anything that in particular that kind of like stands out to you that you think of when you're just like, this is the person I'm trying to help? Like, I know that there are people in my life that I go, you really let this person down. Or, your program really set this person back 5 years because like you promised them help. They were dejected or turned away by even one bad actor within the community or one missed communication. And now their life is forever altered.
Yes. Yeah. There's someone that comes to mind very instantly who's been battling for a long time. He was a victim of military malpractice. And, the doctor just did an outdated surgery on him and left him, having to rely on machines and, getting fluids every day. He's doing better and better. But last year he texted me and said he got a bill from, he has to go to a specialized hospital because the VA can't keep up with his care. And he told me he got a $5,000 bill and the VA is not covering it. It just, someone who's 100% who, their current condition has been just dependent on as a result of the military, and for the VA to not cover it, it just what made me want to like break down for him and do everything I could for him. So he's someone, very humble, does not want me to ever say his name, but it's someone I keep in touch with weekly, and that's who I fight for.
And for a lot of veterans, it does feel like an uphill battle. I mean, when we get out, it's not like a lot of us seek out the VA as a source of income or source of care. A lot of the times, at least in my generation of when I got out back in 2010, 2011 timeframe, as people were talking to me about the VA, I was like, oh, well, I don't really need that, or I don't really qualify for that. Like, not a big deal, regardless of how many times I went to war and fought for the country. Like, it was still something that I avoided because I was like, this is for somebody else. But when we start to try to get involved, it does get infuriating. We do get sent bills that are terrifying and astronomical. And we're just like, how are we going to cover that? For those that get frustrated by the seeming inaction of the VA or the actual inaction of the VA, what advice would you give to them to help them find the courage to make a difference in their life and in their community?
You can't I don't blame anyone for wanting to just give up and say, hey, I'm finding peace. And sometimes that's me myself. Like, I'd rather just go out and use my insurance, even though I know I have a copay, but I feel more in charge of my healthcare. So I don't blame anyone. But also, like, then there's a side of me that's like, like, you earned the right to go to the VA to get that care. And, there are some amazing doctors there. Why are you having to pay for this? But just don't give up. And especially if you don't have any other choice, reach out in Facebook groups, find out how other people did it. You're probably not alone in your problem, and you can absolutely find a way to get help, get it covered. Don't let them win.
Well, and it's true though. Like, there's always a way forward. Especially for those that have served. There's programs, there's resources. The Millennial Veteran Facebook group is one of those resources that, I mean, I've seen so many people come there with a question, and people have said, hey, have you looked into this? Have you looked into that? Give me a call, private message me, because I know this person here. And it's amazing what you all have done. And I know it took a long time to get where you were at. You started this with just two of your friends. Like, imagine if you would have quit before we met in 2023. Like, that was a big year for the Millennial Veterans Group. You guys passed many milestones that year alone.
Yeah, and I think it goes back because I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to start a place. I'm going to commit 5 years, and I'm actually at over the 4-year mark. So I still got one. And it's funny. I think once I hit the 2-year mark, I was like, yeah, I need to be doing this for the rest of my life. There's no way. And, I'm starting to see other communities, other people online talk about the needs of younger veterans. And that gets me excited because I'm like, all right, I can see my retirement coming because, other people are taking that torch because it's being talked about, which it really makes me super happy.
Well, and it's amazing when it's talked about in the current generation of veterans that get produced because, we can look at the military initiatives right now. And they are working on making things better. They are working on building better transitions. They're working on building better family care plans for service members while they're in. And so those voices are super important to continue to be shared.
Yeah, I've seen a tide turning, and I'm not sure if it's just I'm finding the right places on the internet or if it just really is becoming a forefront of the conversation of mental health, of, hey, we're not getting veterans proper care when they get out, or they just, we need to check in on more people. I'm not sure which one it is, but I'm hoping it's the second one.
I think you can find yourself in dark rooms on the internet, but like yours is definitely one of light. And I know it hasn't been easy. This past year, you also, even though you hit a ton of milestones with the millennial veteran groups, you've also had a lot of personal challenges come up in your family life through a medical diagnosis to a move, changing careers within the family. Even though you did relocate to one of my favorite states in the country, Jersey, it definitely has its own challenges. How have you managed to balance your personal hurdles while continuing to lead and inspire others?
Oh, I did not do a good job at first. So we moved in May, and I think it was just so much change at once. Like we both got new jobs, we got a new house, a new city, every New Jersey, like knew everything, and it was very overwhelming. So I kind of had to go back to basics and take one day at a time. Doing things. Getting back to like once the chaos settles, planning. Like you don't have to have things done today, but maybe just have a plan of when you're going to do it. Like that's been something that's helping me. Like, okay, I'm going to take this day to work on this. And I also started a new job as an intern for a nonprofit. So, just having dedicated time for things, and also, being a mom and making sure everyone's needs are met.
Yeah. So let's talk about transitions real quick because a move is a major, major transition. A new job is yet another major transition. A new diagnosis that's going to have long-term impacts in a family member is another major transition. And now you've started also working for a nonprofit. Again, like that's I think I just counted 4 or 5 major transitions. What's your strategy for going about and facing these transitions? And then I also want to hear more about the nonprofit work because pre-show it sounded really awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Honestly, I just kind of dove into community because I knew that would be a great place. I found a church here, just offered to volunteer and find support there. Reaching out through the veteran community, showing up at Legions, I found a mentor. She's a retired Army veteran. She's amazing. And she's really, someone I found just by showing up to different events and putting myself out there. And that's just given me confidence to reach out to others. That's been it. And just being very present and conscious of what I'm doing.
So with the community aspect, why was it so important for you to connect with the community when you first got there?
I think it's something that I misstepped when I got out of the military. And, I moved to a new state with my now husband, and I just withdrew myself, when I should have gone out and, gotten support. So I didn't want to make that issue again. And also just knowing there's so much change happening. It's either there's people that are willing to help and not being silent about it. Like, I think one of the first things out of my mouth when I'm talking to people now is, hey, we just moved here, or hey, like we're dealing with this, like, or my husband works here now. So now, like I have the kids by myself a lot, just being open about it. And you'd be surprised at how receptive people are, or just, thinking of you, or, just Yeah.
That's amazing when you're able to find yourself in a healthy community amongst people that will listen to you, because it frees you up to also speak transparently about what it is you're going through, knowing that you're not going to be judged.
That's very true. And also I think I turned 30 this year. And so also I'm just like 30, I told myself I'm freeing myself from other people's opinions. I'm just so over that. I'm leaving a lot of things in my 20s, and that's one of it. So if they want to judge me, that's on them. That's not on me anymore.
That's going to be a good lesson to learn. Continue to instill it and reinforce it all throughout the 30s. Because when you hit 40, there's going to be like new challenges. Now you're going to have teenagers in the house and trying to teach them that the opinion of others doesn't matter.
Oh, I'm already doing that. I'm just like, you're 6 years old. Why do you care? I'm not redoing your hair for a third time today.
Oh my goodness. So new move, new job, still in the same field, but the nonprofit work, that's something new that you are working on, and it's still within the veteran community. What is it that you're working on with the nonprofit, and how'd that come about?
So right before I left Maryland, I found a group called Operation Second Chance, and they just did coffee socials. They did art classes for women veterans, all free of charge. And I started showing up, and I found out that the woman who ran it, she was like, I'm leaving here within the next year and I'd love you to take over. I see you're really passionate about veterans. And I was like, I'm moving, that's when I had to tell her. And she's like, okay, like no problem. And then probably like a week or two later, she called me and she said, hey, what do you think about starting a group up where you are? Like the organization wants to expand. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you guys are going to have, like, I get to set up 2 events a month for women veterans, to help them with mental health or, assess their needs or anything. Yes, absolutely. Like I would love to, not thinking like, oh, that's another thing on my plate, but I thought it would be so motivating another motivation to get out in my community, put myself out there, connect with others, find other women, other veterans, and that it's been such a motivator.
That's really awesome. It sounds like such a dream position for somebody that has your interest. And I know that there's a lot of people that have interests like yours. What advice would you give them if they wanted to get started working in like this pay it forward mentality or problem solving mentality with groups like you're passionate about, say the veteran group?
Yeah, I think that's another thing. It's important to get out. And that's been a big lesson for me. Like probably a theme of this is just getting out in your community and knowing that you add value. And it feels good to, give back and just talk with others and realize like we're really not alone. I was actually on a work meeting yesterday, and it was kind of like, because we all work from home for my main job, and just some of the people on there were like, I feel lonely. I miss being at work. I miss, decorating people's cubicles for their birthday. I miss having, Christmas parties. And I was just like, yeah, I think a lot of people all over the country kind of feel like this. They got so much of their community from whether it was work or, going to school. And now, a new transition in life, you're, out of the community. So much more pulls us out of the community these days. So we got to actively work against that.
And I know that being confined to our homes during the COVID time, I just read an article this morning. I still don't know how I feel about it because I enjoy remote work. It works for some of my disability stuff. It works for my social anxiety. Like I get a lot of anxiety going into the workplace just because of back pain, or I don't know what to encounter. However, Amazon has come out and said, hey, starting in 2025, we're going to require all corporate workers to go back into the office. And they're talking about some of the things that you had just said is like being a part of a community is an important part of life. It's an important part of society. And it also makes us more productive because I will say, like, when I see people like you, as productive as you are, all the things that you have going on, I'm like, where does she get the energy from? So what do you think it is? Like, is it the resilience that you possess, or is it the community that you're a part of?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think I'm resilient because of the community. I can't be without it. And you got to recharge yourself. And when you're around people that you can trust, or maybe they can take up the reins, watch the kids for a little bit or something, that allows you to recharge, and kind of that feeling of like we're all in this together that so many of us miss out of the military. It's so hard to find. And I think we're always looking for it and trying to find it. And we get a little discouraged when it's not exactly like that. But it's not going to be the same, but it can still be great and exactly what you need right now.
That's really awesome. Sorry, we keep harping on community because I
I
love it so
know.
much.
I know.
And
I didn't see this coming.
well, and one of the things that like community also helps you do is it helps you express yourself. And one of the ways that we got to know one another before actually meeting face to face is you used to host vet chats on Sunday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But with your move, that was seemingly one of the things that you had to say, hey, I have to say goodbye. I have to close the curtains on this part for now. Can you walk us through what led you to choosing to end vet chats and refocus your efforts?
Yes. I mean, how many times a week do you get to have a one-on-one conversation with, someone you may know, may not know, and just have an opportunity to learn? Like, what you're doing right now is why I love podcasting, because I love that. I don't think there's a better high than after a podcast went good and you're just like, yes, like that was fun. I connected. I love that. And yeah, I think I really like that. I really miss that. But I had to let something go when I was moving. I don't really have a good space for it, for recording. I just trusted God saying like, hey, I need to let this go. And it was at its height. I mean, my last episode is with Bryan Cranston. It was like my most downloaded episode ever. It was so cool to see. And then, just have to say, hey, goodbye, vet chats. I miss it. I'd love to go back to it. Maybe repivot a little bit.
All right. Well, I'm excited for the repivot, and obviously let us know if that ever does come down the pipeline, because we want to be sure to celebrate that. But I also know like letting go of something you love and hold on to so dearly is a really hard thing. I mean, it's one of the struggles that veterans go through is we let go of a service, whether we loved it or hated it, we're letting go of a part of our life that was such an integral part for a season. How do you, Jenna, stay confident in making those decisions to let something go? And what would you say to somebody facing a similar type of transition?
I always try to check myself and say, like, am I hanging on to this out of love or fear? This is going to be a weird analogy, but I inherited my grandma's coins. She like collected a lot of coins. And then I ran into this guy actually on one of my classes, and he's like, I'm a coin collector. And I sent him all of them. And he was really excited. His son was really excited about them. And he offered to buy them. And I felt so weird about it. I was like, I don't know, like this is a piece of my grandma, something I have left from her. And then I started to realize like, I'm kind of holding on to these because I'm scared that, one day they're going to become valuable. They really were never going to, but like I'm scared of letting her down. And then I realized like, like somebody else could be enjoying them. They're just sitting in my basement, really. So like I decided like the right decision was to do it out of love, a love for like, just sharing that love with someone else who really, got so much joy out of these coins. But yeah, I think it's really just like deciding like, are you hanging on to something out of fear or, out of love, and trying to think on that. And it takes a while. It's not going to be like an automatic decision.
I mean, how many things in our life, and I love that you were able to serve as a conduit of your grandmother's joy. Even if it wasn't within your own family, you were able to pass on her joy to another person. Like, that's a beautiful sentiment to say, hey, now it's your turn to take the reins. And you got to be a part of that process.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't care about coins. I mean, they didn't mean anything to me. And I think I felt guilty about that too. Like, should I get into it? And it's like, I don't think my grandma would have wanted that. I think she'd be happy with my decision.
She probably would have gotten you started earlier in life if that's what she wanted you to do. You're going to be the
Right,
coin collector.
exactly. Yes.
I don't know anything about this. Now I have to learn a new hobby.
Yeah, exactly.
No, with vet chats, I know that everything has its seasons. And there may be a time when 1 Mile One Veteran eventually pivots to a new design, a new format, or joins forces with an entity that meets our values. Right, like those are all things that can help us grow. And sometimes when we're holding on to something, it can really prevent us from moving on to the next better thing.
Exactly. That's why I said I got to let the podcast go. And I know God's going to, fill that energy and that space with something else. It's just going to happen.
Your life has been a series of, well, just like anybody's life, roller coasters, but it feels like this year it has been a series of accomplishments. You publicly, gracefully handled the move and the transition. And, I always tell people, like, even us moving back to Hawaii has been a really hard thing for Leanne and myself. We've had a lot of internal conflict of, defining new roles and who's going to take on what responsibility. And it's difficult. And we're a part of a community that has known us for over a decade at this point. And when they ask us, they're like, what's going on in your lives? And we're just like, it's hard here. This is good. Like, we're excited. I mean, you even asked me, like, how are you liking being back in Hawaii? And I paused and hesitated because it was just like, it's complicated. I love being home, but it's also difficult because we were on the road for nearly 2 years. And I tell people, I'm like, it's going to take about 6 months to really feel if this transition was for the good, or if this is something that I need to grow beyond. Like, if this was just a stepping point to the next transition, right?
Yeah, but you got to give it time. You can't just say, and that's what so many of us do when we get out. We just decide, oh, this isn't for me, or like walk into a workplace or say like, okay, this isn't for me. But you're right. I think 6 months is a great time period where you're going to feel it out and see what it is.
Yeah, you got to judge that personally, and then once you finally make that decision, I mean, I'll liken it to like federal government work. If anybody's ever worked federal government, that first time that you agree to accept a job, it's usually a 12-month probationary period, and then you don't become a career employee until you've been there for 3 years. And I think that that's their way of recognizing, like, hey, this taking a new job is a permanent life transition, and it's going to take time for you to feel comfortable. Where do you feel like you're at right now in like your series of accomplishments? Are you like, hey, I'm waiting for the next thing, or are you trying to feel settled right now?
I think I'm still trying to feel settled, actually, especially in my job, because I was kind of describing myself before when I was like, yeah, go show up to workplace, say this is not for me, because that's me. And that has been me every time I come into a challenge at work. I'm just like, I need a new job. Like, I got to go on to USA Jobs right now and start freaking out and like telling my husband, I hate my job. I'm quitting. You're going to have to pay for daycare, whatever. But
I laugh so hard because I do this about 3 times a week.
Right? Yeah, it's relatable, especially because and then I'm just like, okay, calm down. You probably do this too. Like, you get to work from home. There's some perks here. There's a way to work your way up. Is the job really that bad? And it's just, yeah, you gotta calm yourself down. But I do this. I've been doing this since I moved here. And one thing I used to do at my old job and in the military was I would not reach out. I would just kind of suffer in silence and say, hey, I'll just suck it up and do it real quick. But I'm like, no, I'm 30 now. I'm doing things differently. And, I'm going to reach out to my leads and say, hey, this is a lot. Can we move things around? And you wouldn't believe, like, they were just like, yeah, sure, no problem. And I'm like, that was easy. Now, I know not all workplaces will be like that, but, I was shocked. I was like, I should have been doing this my whole life.
Well, and you never know until you actually ask.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it's also really important to know what you want before you just step into something too. Like, that's a really hard thing. Like, hey, I'm going to step into this job. What do I want my life to look like? Do I want an hour-long commute? If you don't, maybe you either live closer to a job or you find a job that suits your lessened commute time.
Yeah, exactly. Like I feel like everything's kind of just like become like this job. I kind of just applied for it and I got it, and I was like, oh, this is cool. I just wanted to be a federal employee with good benefits, and now definitely like with health insurance. And I've been doing it for 4 years, so it's just like I don't know how I got to make it work for me. I got to count my blessings. Is what it really is.
Well, with everything you experienced, because a lot of people would look at your life and go, she's a successful person. She's gainfully employed, a mother of some wonderful children, stepmother of others, married, part of her community, serving in a nonprofit. Like, you have a lot of things on paper that says you're successful. And when we're younger, we can look at other people and go, oh, that's success. I want to achieve that. Has success in your mind changed over the years? And if so, like, what does it look like for you now?
Lately, it's just being able to go to sleep at a decent time and, not have my thoughts spinning and just feeling at peace, like right before I go to sleep and being able to fall asleep. And, even if I get woken up at 2 hours later by one of the kids, that's success to me, being able to go to bed when I want to, and just really the little things, that's success.
Those are huge parts of success. I mean, like, setting those basics for me has been a new definition of success. I'm like, okay, I want to be able to have a week where I don't have an anxiety or panic attack. I want to have some time where I don't have like debilitating injuries. I'm like, yeah, I mean, as long as my basic needs are met, my family is taken care of. Like, now success is a little bit different because it's a little bit more personal, right?
Yeah. And does that feel weird at all? Like, do you ever feel like I'm lowering the bar or, like I'm going to lose my drive?
I would say no, because like when people externally look at me, they're like, okay, you're running multiple marathons this year. You've lost a tremendous amount of weight. You're hosting a podcast. You're working, this high vis occupation. I'm married to one of the most wonderful people in the world. It's the image that's shown to the world is different than what I would define it as. People be like, oh, he's successful because of this. And I'm just like, I'm trying to be successful in my own life because I know my mind tears me down regularly.
Yeah. And that's the battle we can't see. And so much, like of that, sometimes is like the motivator, and like I would do anything just to not have anxiety.
Right? It's wild. I'm like, oh, I want to do so much more. And somebody's like, dude, you just ran like a Spartan trifecta better than you thought. You just PR'd a marathon. Like, what are you talking about?
That's crazy. How was that Spartan trifecta?
So that was a really big surprise. I worked on it for an entire year, and I loved it. It was hot. It was sweaty. It was everything that you would think a hard challenge like that would be. I was worried for a little bit because I have like a neck and spine injury. So during the training, I had periods where like my left arm would just go completely numb, or I would lose a lot of like function. And so there was a lot of health concerns leading into it. And I was just like, I'm going to try not to worry about it. I'm going to trust my body, and we're just going to go forward.
Yeah, that's another, like, just having that belief, sometimes we can jinx ourselves by saying, oh, my knee's going to start hurting. And then there it is. But if you're like, no, it's going to be just fine.
Yeah. So this year, for you, all that you've done, because of the impact that you had in 2023 with the millennial veteran, you were actually invited to be a part of the 2024 Military Influencer Conference and run a panel of young veterans. I feel like I know that we were invited out and unfortunately couldn't make it. And when I saw the panel put together, I was like, I don't know if I would hit the age cutoff. I'm like, I know I'm young, but.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, I would have loved what you would have added to the mental health conversation.
If you could sum it up, because you had some amazing people on there, our friend Michelle, a veteran coach, JP, who's an awesome podcaster as well, yourself, and I can't remember. I think you had two other people, but in a nutshell, like, what was your message, and what do you feel like the audience walked away with?
Yeah, our message was just to put it out there, like, younger veterans are the ones that are struggling the most. They have the highest suicide rate, and that first year, that 12 months after service, is the highest mortality rate. And it's something that we can prevent just by having conversations like you do every week. It's just, I don't think a lot of people know about it. And I knew I would have more of a corporate audience there, a nonprofit. These people probably don't even have their eyes on it. So I also wanted to include how to engage younger veterans. What is this demographic? They're more diverse. Are they likely to have kids? Are they more single? What type of people? So explaining the demographics to them, and what's going to help them feel comfortable. What are they going to be attracted to in terms of, we're not really going to the Legion, less younger veterans are even drinking, we're trying to make healthy choices. So we're going to be attracted to more places of healing rather than, traditional spaces for veterans of, drinking, or maybe, like parades. I'm trying to think of those more traditional things. So explaining that to them, yeah, it was eye-opening to a lot of people.
It seems like every generation says the generation below me is acting entitled. If they only knew, if they only had this struggle. What are some of, because I know that's not true. Like, that's a complete fallacy that we just pass on from generation to generation throughout all time. So there's no real enemy in it other than our own prejudices against different people groups. What do you think it is for millennial veterans, because you have such a huge community, that would really tie them to the veteran community or a community of their own to be able to better take care of themselves?
I think what kind of attracts them is first getting their benefits. A lot of people in our group are in school, wanting to better themselves, finding out how they can use the best of it. The VRE is so underutilized, being able to go back to school. And so many people are finding out about it, even though it's been like a few years since they've been out in healthcare. I think that draws a lot of people in, or even their spouses in, saying like my husband got out. He could be getting free healthcare. Like, what should we do? Like, where do we start? Because sometimes the veteran won't do it. Or even, like, that's what's going to start the conversation. And I think if they see the camaraderie, the helpfulness, here's other tips, if the VA isn't working for you, or, what I've been trying to do to help myself get better sleep hygiene, for example, and just continuing that conversation, I think really attracts younger veterans.
Well, and it's important to continue to talk about it and talk about it in a healthy way. I mean, even in the ranks of the military is to talk about the VA in a healthy way as well, of like, hey, this is something that you should prep for as part of, your future in life, whether you're doing 2 years, 4 years, 20 years. What do you feel like the response was from the audience about your MIC panel?
I think we got some great feedback. A lot of people were just excited to see themselves at a stage like that, because when we went the previous year, even when you were there wasn't a lot of younger people on the stages giving the talks. It was more people, in leadership positions or high-ranking corporate workers. So it was just it was cool to see that, and we kind of involved the audience a lot, asked their opinion. So I like that we made it more interactive. People seem to really like that too, and helped engage them.
That's really awesome. I'm super proud of you. Leanne's super proud of you. We were really sad. We had some FOMO for the MIC. Unfortunately, starting a new position, being 5,000 miles away, it just was not in the cards for us. But if there is ever an opportunity to return to a stage like that, like, we would love to support you and continue to get that message out, because, one of the things that we do know is, even though the veteran community And the government as a whole is a very slow moving, sometimes stagnant machine. It requires a lot of grease to get those wheels rolling. And the grease are these conversations in these public places. It's not just going on and complaining amongst your community, but you have to start doing something about it. And I know platforms like the millennial veteran groups are kind of a no complaint zone. It's like, let's bring the solutions forward. What do we need? What are the pain points? And how can we as a group move forward so that legislation can get made, so that policies can be put in place that will benefit not only us, but the next generation to come, because we have to look out for the next group of people that are going to go fight in our nation's wars.
Exactly. And it's easy to complain. I see people do it all the time. Like we talked offline, like Reddit, it's everyone's just kind of getting on a soapbox, but that's not helpful. And I think it's actually harmful in the veteran community, because if we keep complaining about something, then someone's going to feel like there's no hope. There's no way they can get help if all they're seeing is, oh, this was terrible. I got out and came back to my hometown and there was nothing for me. We got to give people, you can critique, say what you would like to be different, but don't just complain about leadership. And this can bleed over to politics. And I think politics can be so divisive in the veteran community when we got to keep it out. So that's another thing. I think a lot of complaints come with politics and we just got to keep it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the VA, just like the military, is supposed to and should continue to remain like an apolitical issue. And if we, the veteran community, aren't bringing our grievances, our concerns, and our changes to the VA itself, it's never going to change. So if we stop showing up, it's just going to go away, or it's going to continue to be like this rusty old dinosaur that nobody wants to experience. I mean, just the demographic change from from the Vietnam War to the war in Iraq, the number of women in the military has gone up year after year after year. And so the VA has to accommodate for that. But if women veterans aren't speaking up, how can the VA accommodate?
Yeah, exactly. And we have to show up in these spaces and we have to say, hey, we want it to be better. Or we can't invent a new VA. We got to work with what we have and make changes from within.
Yeah, and we're going to do that as a community, as we show up to the hospitals. I mean, the directors are there to listen. The public affairs specialists are there to hear our grievances and changes. All too often, I mean, I've even had this in the midst of like PTSD. Like I've raised my voice and yelled at a worker at the VA because of my frustration getting so high. And thank goodness, I've had the wherewithal to walk away and not continue to try to point my issue and come back and apologize, because regardless of how slow they moved, I still have a responsibility to behave a certain way despite my ailments and my mental health.
Yeah. And I think it's a very like first reaction to get frustrated, to want to yell. And I don't want to, knock anyone for doing that, because that's human. You're going to put someone in a corner, they're going to yell about it. But, once we can take a step back, like I'm sure you did, and realize like what brought me to this point, what could I have done, or what could have been done to prevent this, and just kind of think about that and how we could prevent it from happening to others.
Well, and one of the great ways to do it, and I think like we're seeing this in the online spaces, I'd like to see it more and more in the personal spaces. And I know that there's groups like peer support groups. If I know that I'm going to the hospital, any hospital, with an issue where I'm currently in acute pain, or it might be a difficult conversation, I like to bring support. And what better person to bring than somebody that's also a veteran, right? Like it's a way that we can support each other, saying, hey, I've got a hospital visit. Would you mind just accompanying me? Because I'm really anxious about this. I don't know what to expect.
Yeah. So I know there's patient advocates, someone that you can talk to schedule to come with you. But is there any groups locally that you know of that you know, are for that, you know, you could find someone to come with you.
So I don't know of any personal groups. I mean, I know there's groups that will drive you to the VA, like the DAV will provide you transportation if you don't have it. There's stuff like that. Unfortunately, like a lot of groups are either under-resourced, they don't have enough volunteers. So what I always encourage people to do is build your community that's going to support you. A lot of the times we gravitate towards people that are like-minded. So if we are complaining people, always looking like always ending up in a fight, like if I'm always ending up in a fight, I'm probably the person that's picking that fight. It's not the world around me. Nobody's out to get me. I'm just looking for a fight constantly. So I like to surround myself with people that, have stability in their lives. Maybe they've, managed to maintain long-term relationships with their family members, their spouses, their children. Um, you know, Maybe they've had the same job for longer than 4 or 5 years. And I'm just like, okay, I want to surround myself with that person. They have a sense of something that I need in my life, which is that stability. And then I build a relationship with them where I can speak transparently to them, and then I invite them along.
Yeah, that's such a good skill that I think consciously I've done so many times. But like I said, like I have a mentor here, but just hearing it saying out loud, that's so simple. And why can't more of us do that? And honestly, that's why I was like drawn to you and Leanne, because I saw how you were with one another. You just had such a good read on each other's needs. It was just so cool to see. And I was like, that's someone I want in my circle, because I'd like that, more of that, I want to learn those skills.
Well, and I know that your group is one of those groups that provides a tremendous amount of support. I mean, one of the groups that I am a part of is your mental health chat group. And whenever I see somebody reach out or have a complaint, they don't go there and say, "Oh, so and so did this." They say, "Hey, how can I meet my need?" And like you had brought up, the millennial group, the younger veteran group are at the highest rates of suicidal ideations and acts currently. That isn't really talked about. And so with the increasing rate of suicide amongst the veterans, the military members, first responders, what message of hope do you have for those that are currently struggling?
I'd like to say, like, your current condition or situation doesn't define you. This isn't you, it's not you for the rest of your life. You're not stuck. There's nothing wrong with you. And it's not permanent. It's going to be something you're going to have to figure out and work with and live with, but it doesn't define who you are. And you are worthy of healing. I think a lot of times we get in our own way of saying, we're not worthy of healing, or, I'm leaving people behind if I get better, or think of the people that will never get better and feel guilty. But by healing yourself, or, just reaching out for help, you're going to help so many others. So don't let this moment or, trauma, whatever happened to you, define you.
Well, thank you so much, Jenna. Where can people find and connect with you or your groups?
On Instagram at The Millennial Veteran, and on Facebook, The Millennial Veterans Group are the two best ways.
That's awesome. And you are super active in the group. So if anybody is having a message directly for Jenna, please do tag her in those chat groups. Thank her for the amazing work that she's done. Get connected with her healthy group of people that are bringing solutions, because what you are doing is absolutely incredible. And also be sure to, if you have a veteran or somebody struggling in your life, be sure to pick up her workbook as well. There's some great questions and some exercises in there that will lead to some personal growth.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me back on.
Absolutely. We've absolutely enjoyed having you back on the One Mile, One Veteran podcast. And for every other listener out there, remember, you can also catch the 1 Mile, 1 Veteran podcast on Reach Across America Radio, ready for you on platforms like iHeartRadio, Odyssey, and the TuneIn app.